"This cruise is for successful family only," my mom said with that sharp, polished smile she wore like armor. Dad chuckled next to her, glass of champagne in one hand, the other wrapped around my golden boy brother's shoulder. "And we didn't raise a captain," he added, lifting his glass. "Just a cabin girl." Laughter scattered across the dock like glass shattering. Uncles, cousins, even my brother's fiancée stifled a smirk behind her wine-colored lipstick. My hands didn't shake. I didn't flinch. I just reached into my leather tote bag and pulled out the keys. Silver. Sleek. Branded. The moment the lanyard with the yacht company's crest dangled in the air, the port coordinator's voice boomed. "Captain Reeves, the vessel is ready for you and your guests." And that was when it happened. One by one, their boarding passes fell. Some dropped them. Some froze. My mother's wine tilted, but she didn't notice as her hand lowered, stiff and unsure. "My name is Alyssa Reeves. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because sometimes the deepest betrayals aren't explosive. They're slow, daily, coated in tradition and salt." Have you ever spent your whole life trying to prove you're more than the role they wrote for you? Because I did. What they didn't see behind my calm smile on that dock was the 10 years I spent swallowing their backhanded compliments. The birthdays they skipped. The graduation where they left early to catch my brother's soccer game. I used to think if I achieved enough, paid their bills, showed up to events, helped mom through her surgery, they'd finally say, "We're proud." Instead, I got, "You're just not as ambitious as your brother. Why don't you do something impressive for once?" She's good with chores. Always has been. So I stopped arguing. I stopped asking. And I started building. Quietly. Because there's a kind of power that grows in silence. And when it blooms, it doesn't need applause. That cruise? It was never just a vacation. It was my test. To see if they'd love me without knowing what I owned. Spoiler. They failed. But what happened after they realized whose yacht it was? Let's just say, it rocked more than the boat. My brother was the first to break the silence. "Wait, your yacht," he scoffed, pointing at the massive, pristine white vessel behind me. "You mean you rented it, right?" "No," I said, stepping past him. "I mean I own it." Mom blinked like her lashes were malfunctioning. "You don't even have a real job." I laughed softly. "I guess that depends on what you call real." The yacht's private crew greeted me with salutes and nods. One of them, Captain Alvarez, handed me the final manifest, waiting for my approval. I scanned it, signed, and turned back to the family, now awkwardly clutching luggage and designer sunglasses like broken shields. "Boarding starts in 10. Passengers under the confirmed manifest only." Dad's face flushed. "Sweetheart, you're not seriously saying—" "I gave you all a chance," I said, still calm, still gentle. "To see me, not what I own, not what I used to do for you. Just me. And you made it clear. I'm not successful enough to be family." Let me rewind for a moment. 3 years ago, I was working 12-hour shifts on marine logistics teams, managing shipments for cruise lines, private vessels, and ecotourism fleets. No one in my family cared. They didn't ask how I was doing. Didn't notice when I stopped coming to holidays. Didn't text me when I launched my own consulting firm. And definitely didn't congratulate me when, after 2 brutal investment rounds, I acquired one of the smaller yacht fleets I used to serve coffee on. They were too busy planning their own lives, ones that never had a seat for me unless I brought plates or paid the deposit. I bought the yacht not to prove anything. I bought it because the ocean taught me to be steady, even when everything else swayed. Back on the dock, Mom tried a softer tone. "We didn't mean it like that," she said, her voice suddenly delicate. "Of course not," I replied. "You never mean the knife. It just ends up in the back anyway." They thought I'd break, that I'd cry, that I'd beg to be let in. Instead, I turned to the crew and said, "Raise anchor when ready." The yacht horn blasted. The walkway began to lift. And my family stood frozen, watching their cabin girl disappear over the waves. But they had no idea what was waiting on board, because one more surprise was still to come. The yacht glided out over the harbor, sunlight dancing on the water like tiny spotlights lighting my exit. Behind me, my parents, brother, and his fiancée shrank into the background, stunned, motionless, silenced not by rage, but by reality. They'd spent years defining me by what I wasn't. And now, they were choking on what I had become. Inside the main lounge, the real guests were waiting. 10 names, each carefully chosen. None related by blood. There was Cassie, my college roommate, who once gave me her last $20 when I was late on rent. Janelle, my former supervisor, now a single mother, who covered my shifts when I had to rush mom to the ER years ago, and never once asked for anything in return. And Malik, the marine mechanic who used to stay late after hours to show me how the engine room worked, when my own dad couldn't even explain how to change a tire. They were all here, in gowns and suits, sipping champagne, because I hadn't just built this yacht to flaunt. I'd built it as a space where real love, real loyalty, could breathe. As I walked in, Cassie raised her glass. To Alyssa, she said, smiling. The girl they overlooked, until she sailed right past them. Laughter erupted, but not the mocking kind I was used to. The kind that feels like sunlight in your lungs. I raised my own glass and said, to the ones who saw me, before I became visible. We clinked, and for the first time I felt full. Later that night, just as the stars were rising, I sat alone on the upper deck. Quiet, reflecting. That's when Malik joined me, handing over a small, black velvet pouch. "What's this?" I asked. He grinned. "A token. For your first official journey as captain owner." Inside, a compass. But not just any compass. It was the one we'd repaired together back when I was a logistics assistant, the one we salvaged from a shipwrecked vessel no one thought was worth saving. I held it in my hands, eyes stinging, because this was who I was. Not the cabin girl they mocked, but the girl who learned to navigate storms. And now, I had my own course. I looked toward the horizon and whispered. They called me lost. But they forgot, some of us live at sea. The next morning, my inbox was flooded. Messages. Missed calls. A voice memo from my brother that started with, "Alyssa, what the hell was that stunt?" Mom's text read, "We were just joking. You know we love you. Please call." And Dad's? Just a screenshot of a news headline. Former marine logistics consultant becomes youngest black female owner of private luxury yacht line. The article had quotes from my silent investors, photos from my yacht's maiden voyage, even a mention of our philanthropic charter program, all of which they never knew about, because they never asked. Back in the yacht lounge, I watched as Janelle's son ran around the deck, gleeful and free. Cassie was on a call with a nonprofit we were going to sponsor. And Malik? He was organizing a diving trip for guests who wanted to explore coral restoration sites. This wasn't a vacation. It was legacy in motion. Every person here had once lifted me. Now I was returning the tide. I didn't respond to my family's messages. Instead, I made a different kind of call. To the manager of the same port they used to cruise from, the one my dad bragged about being a preferred guest at for years. "Hi, this is Alyssa Reeves. I'd like to request a hold on dock spot B3 indefinitely." The same spot they had just booked their next family vacation through. The manager hesitated. "Ma'am, that's where your parents' upcoming reservation." "I know. Cancel it." "May I ask the reason?" I smiled. "Sure. The dock's reserved for family." Back in the captain's office, I framed the printed version of my yacht license. Not to brag. To remember. Because I'd spent so many years trying to belong that I nearly forgot I could own. Own the space. Own my story. Own my silence, even when their noise was louder. The sun began to dip into the sea. Dinner was almost ready. But before I joined my real family, I typed one final message to my mother. "You once said I wasn't built to lead. But Mom, not only did I build the ship, I learned to sail without you clapping once." I hit send and deleted the thread. I wasn't cutting ties out of hate. I was finally honoring my own worth. By the 5th day, we were anchored off the coast of a quiet island. No tourist traps, no party boats. Just waves whispering like secrets and stars more honest than any family I ever knew. The guests relaxed around a fire pit on the upper deck. Janelle's son was showing Malik how to roast marshmallows while Cassie played soft jazz on the portable speaker. It felt like a scene from a life I used to think belonged to other people, the ones who were invited, who had rooms already made for them. Now, I was the one holding the keys. Around midnight, I got a message request from an unknown number. It was my sister-in-law, the one who once said, "Alyssa's better at cleaning than dreaming. Can we talk? Your parents are hurting. You're still their daughter. And this yacht thing, it's not permanent. Family is." I stared at the message, and I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because for years, that was the line they'd weaponize anytime I asked for respect. It's just family. It's not that deep. You're being too sensitive. But the truth is, it was that deep. They called me sensitive when I cried quietly in the guest room after being excluded from family decisions, despite paying their bills. They said I was dramatic when I asked for recognition, after organizing, cooking, and financing 4 consecutive family holidays. And they laughed every time I dared to dream bigger than support role. Now, they wanted to talk. I powered off my phone, because closure doesn't always look like a conversation. Sometimes it's simply no longer explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. The next day, we stopped at a village I used to deliver supplies to as a rookie in logistics. They remembered me. The fishermen, the little girls who once braided my hair, the elder who blessed our voyage with herbs and salt water. We donated new solar equipment. Janelle's nonprofit gave books, and the children gave us the gift of wild, joyful laughter. That night, Cassie whispered to me, "You built a home at sea, one where we all belong." And it hit me. I didn't just escape my family's house. I redefined what family was. Because blood might bind you, but choice builds nations. By the time we reached the next port, word had already traveled. Apparently, a cousin had shared a picture of the yacht online with the caption, "Can't believe Alyssa went full billionaire without telling anyone." The comments? "Wait, her yacht? Isn't she the one who always served food at parties? She must have married rich." Of course. They couldn't believe I did it on my own. They had to assign the credit elsewhere, to a man, to luck, to anything except my own sweat and sleepless years. But I didn't respond. I let the silence speak for me. Again. Instead, I hosted a workshop on board. 10 young women from coastal towns, all of them training to become marine engineers and captains. We toured the ship. They asked questions. I showed them blueprints, engine schematics, the exact points where I made changes to increase fuel efficiency. They were sharp, curious, hungry. And when one of them asked, "How do you deal with people who don't believe you belong here?" I smiled and replied, "I stopped needing permission." Later that evening, a delivery arrived via tender boat. A bouquet. White lilies. A card from my father. "We're sorry. Come home. Let's talk." It was late. Too late. Because I had already built a home without 4 walls. My home was where I was seen, heard, valued. So I had the bouquet returned, with a single message attached. "You taught me that love had terms. I've unlearned that lesson now." Malik caught me watching the sea again that night. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "Just thinking." It took them 15 years to say sorry. And it took me 15 minutes to realize I didn't need it anymore. He smiled. "That's the thing about growing into your own skin. It doesn't fit back into the box they gave you." The next morning, Cassie handed me a surprise. A framed print of the yacht with bold letters across the top. "Not the cabin girl." I laughed. It was cheesy. It was perfect. I hung it in the lounge, right above the piano. Not for vanity. For victory. Because this ship wasn't just a vessel. It was a monument. The final leg of the journey took us to a crescent-shaped cove, calm, untouched, the kind of place maps don't name because it's too sacred for tourist brochures. I stood barefoot on the deck, morning wind brushing through my curls. Cassie came up beside me, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "Still quiet," she said. "Sometimes quiet is the loudest part," I replied. She didn't press. She didn't need to. That's the thing about real family. They don't demand your story. They wait until you offer it. Later that afternoon, I pulled out an old journal. The same one I kept when I was 19, sleeping on a mattress in my parents' attic, writing down goals like own a boat one day or travel without asking permission. The pages were wrinkled, tear-stained in places, scribbled with dreams no one believed in except me. One entry caught my eye. Stop trying to be what they want. Be what you needed when you were younger. It felt prophetic now, because this yacht, this space, was exactly that. A place where no one laughed at your ambition, where women led without apology, where dignity was not earned, but inherent. That night, we had a final dinner on the top deck. The table was full of stories, of laughter, of real love. Not a single person asked me to serve. Not a single voice overpowered mine. And when Malik stood up with a toast, his voice cracked just once. To Alyssa, you didn't just build a business. You built us a home. I tried to smile, but my eyes betrayed me. Tears ran freely. For once, I let them, because these weren't tears of loss. They were tears of arrival. After dessert, I slipped away and stood at the stern, alone again, but never lonely. That's when I got one final message. From my brother. Mom and Dad are selling the house. Things haven't been the same since you left. They still talk about that cruise. About how you made your point. Just wanted you to know I get it now. And I'm proud of you. I read it twice. And then I closed the message, not with bitterness, but with peace. Because I finally understood something I never did before. Not everyone who laughs at you will stay blind. Some will remember. Some will learn. The final morning felt different. Not because anything grand happened. Not because of the ocean or the guests or even the island behind us. But because for the first time in my life, I felt free. Not running. Not fighting. Just being. We docked quietly at a private port, the one I now owned a majority share in. The same port where my father used to flash his badge and name-drop friends just to get upgraded tickets for family cruises. He once said to a manager in front of me, "My daughter? She's more useful on deck than in the boardroom." Funny, because now my name was printed on the ownership plaque outside the VIP lounge. As the crew disembarked and Cassie hugged me goodbye, I looked around one last time. This vessel, my floating rebellion, my proof of self, had become more than a yacht. It was a courtroom, a classroom, a confessional, and it had done something no family gathering ever did. It made space for my truth, without making me feel small. Back in the captain's cabin, I left one item on the shelf for the next journey. That compass Malik gave me, right beside a handwritten note. For the next woman they call too emotional, or too ambitious, or too soft. This is for you. Take the wheel. 3 weeks later, back in the city, I passed by a family brunch spot we used to go to. Through the window, I saw my parents sitting with my brother and his fiancée, laughing, eating, their lives unchanged. Or maybe just paused, still waiting for me to return, to shrink, to ask for a seat again. But I didn't go in. I smiled at my reflection in the glass, taller now, even when standing still, and whispered, "Let them eat comfort. I built sovereignty." Final voiceover, if there ever was one. They said I wasn't built to lead, that my place was in the kitchen. So I left, not to prove them wrong, but to find the place where I never had to be right to be respected. And once I found it, I never looked back.